Hey
Hi
there.
there.
Hi.
How are
Good.
you?
Hi. Good. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Excellent. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. It's an honor.
So,
Nice.
where are you coming out of?
I live in Oakland, California.
Oakland, Cal. Right on. Okay, cool. I'm in Kansas City.
Yourself? Oh, beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah. So, well, hey, man,
Eh,
it's great to meet you. And you have so many cool things going on in your life. And I'm curious, before we get to your writing and everything that makes you who you are, how did you survive COVID the last 3 years? How did you get through it? And how did it change the way that you do things now?
I worked a lot. I did a lot of stuff because I since work with people suffering from depression. I worked quite a bit. I developed a good core group of friends. I exercised a lot. Um, so leading up to COVID, I was working on my dissertation and doing a lot of trainings. And so I was in hermit mode for like 2 years.
Okay.
And I defended my dissertation 4 days before the lockdown.
Okay.
And so I was in this strange kind of circumstance that I was already kind of living as if I was in COVID because I had to be in hermit mode to finish my book and dissertation. The downside was I was pushing down a lot of parts of myself, including the wanting to socialize and travel to get all this work done. But that being said, I already kind of had the mindset of like, hey, I'm well equipped to do this. So,
So
yeah.
now that you pull the magnifying glass out, are you are you better off because of that? Because you were prepping yourself, or how do you feel now?
For example, because I did have all this energy to go travel and see the world, I channeled that into my work business and getting my book published. And because there was nothing to do, I graduated. I had the dissertation slash book done. I sent it out to publishers. I made my website and I went full in on my private practice. The downside was there was a good year where it was hard to make a lot of connections, and connect with people. And I already kind of came in a little deprived in that area.
Yeah.
Um, so it was a both and, I think it's something the world needed. It got people to slow down. A lot of people came in for therapy, which is a large part of my focus in my daily life because they finally had the time. They got to see their mental health. They got to get out of occupations that weren't no longer, in service of them. They were in the same job for 20 years, but didn't have a pause.
Yeah.
And so I saw a lot of major rearranging for the world. So I
Yeah.
could see the positives it brought.
For sure. So let's get to the essence of what you do for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day, and one of the kids looks up at you and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
90% of the time it's helping people with depression. And what I've seen at the core of depression is I don't like myself. So that's something I feel like the graders can really sit with. They may not like themselves for many reasons. Maybe the way their parents talk to them, maybe the way the kids treat them. Maybe they're not getting good tests on grades, and so the way the teachers respond. So they start to create an identity of I'm not good enough. And I feel bad and I'm not liked and I don't belong. And that creates a lot of shame. And that makes people kind of isolate. And so what I saw at the core of depression is this relationship with self. And when you're young, it's unconscious. You just introject an identity based on the way people interact with you. And that builds on from third grade moving forward. Next thing people are 30 or they're 60 years old and that identity is still there. And so
Yeah.
we're helping them develop a good relationship with themselves. If you like who you are, life is inherently pleasurable and you're inherently feeling confident and good. But if you're forced to be somebody you don't want to be, life's inherently depressing and kind of miserable. So we're trying to rearrange their identity in the way they see themselves.
So when you were in the third grade, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I had a desire to be a scientist for a very long time. And that was a massive shift. And I carried that out. I was a physics and math major for many years. And though I love science, and I could do it, my strong suit's actually in the more of the humanities and helping people.
So talk to me a little bit about where you were born and raised and how these seeds got into you to want to help people and to pull them through these stages of their lives.
You know, I um I came in with a lot of, I feel, depression. My parents were illegal in this country. My dad from Iran, my mom from Mexico, illegal for like 10 years. So they suffered for a lot of reasons. They felt alienated and they didn't really belong. Hard time with the language, hard time getting work because of where they were. And they also came in with their own cultural kind of trauma. So life at home was actually really hard and painful. And then life at school was actually hard and painful because I was kind of different. I think partly because of the race and background. I was teased a lot. And so by the time I was a teenager, I was at 15 suicidal, depressed. I became an atheist because I was like, how could God exist with so much pain in myself in the world? And then that was where the grace kind of came in. It was a psilocybin mushroom journey at 18 that changed everything, where there's this felt sense that God exists, that we're all interconnected, that we are love and light. So it shifted the core identity inside of me and the way I see others. And that kind of pushed me into like 20 years of self-work and exploration into the realm of consciousness.
So a part of that journey of you getting to a better place is having good people to look up to. Who's been a hero for you in your life?
Because the environment was kind of hard, I found a lot of heroes actually through reading. So after having a kind of spiritual experience like that and nobody around me having it, I dove into literature, got really into all areas of spirituality, also was really into art and music. I've been over 1,000 concerts, and so there'd be a lot of musicians with inspirational lyrics I'd follow. My parents were like, they had a hard time, I think, being parents, but they also worked really hard. It was so much about survival. So I did definitely take a strong work ethic from them. In some ways, I came to the point at 18 or 19 that if I'm going to live, I need to live a life I really, really want.
Yeah.
And I think all that kind of pressure inside pushed me to go all in. I'm like, unless I make the life I really, really want, I don't want to be here. So that kind of helped me kind of create a like strong inner drive.
So as someone that loves music, what was either the first live show you saw that blew you away or one of your favorite concerts ever?
It's one that I talk about fairly often. And my favorite band for the last 20 years has been Tool. And it's a metal band, but they bring a lot of like lyrics when it comes to mysticism, philosophy. They're into psychedelics. And I went to go see them for the first time when I was 18. And on the way to the show, somebody gave me a handful of mushrooms, somebody I just met. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be a really great day. It was the most important day of my whole life. And it felt internally, all these walls, like the stereotypical ego death structure started to happen, where I thought I'm going to die for like 15 minutes, but I got too curious. I let it happen. I dissolved. I felt this voice arise inside and kind of like, hey, this is God. I was like, is this real? I started bawling. I said that we're love and light, that love's the most important thing in the universe. Miles after that is learning. Everything else is so insignificant. Don't worry about it. That we're all interconnected and consciousness pervades everything. So and I was sitting there like crying hard for 90 minutes. That kind of shifted everything, because I went from this reality where we're all isolated, the only thing that exists is matter and science, to like this deep belief in like an eternal spiritual world that's actually more fundamental to all of existence.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let me ask you this. If you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now and spend some time with them, who would it be?
I'm really lucky I got to meet that person.
Yeah.
My favorite and probably my most inspirational person for a long time was Maynard James Keenan, the lead singer of Tool.
Yeah.
And there was a strong sense of like, I'm going to meet this guy. I mean, I sat there on mushrooms, my life changing, seeing him sing, seen them several times, read his autobiography, been following his work for a long time. And then I got the opportunity about 4 or 5 years ago. A friend was working at a high-scale vegan restaurant in the city called Millennium. And Maynard James Keenan, he's very private. He doesn't interact with the fans much. He doesn't like to. But he also owns a winery, and he was doing a wine tour.
Yeah.
And she said he's going to be there soon to share his wine, and it's going to be a 5-course vegan meal. If you want to go, as soon as we get out of class, get on the phone and call them. So I get out of class, I call the restaurant, I say, I want to make reservations. And they're like, sure, do you want us to sit you next to Maynard? And I was like, what? Is this for real? So the day of a month later, I get there early. He's the only other person there. I sit directly in front of him where I was asked to seat. And he's like, hey, would you mind just moving one over? My manager's going to be here. My son's going to be right here. There's a mushroom expert right next to him talking about all the dishes, because it's all be mushroom themed. And then it's him. And so I get to share a 3-hour meal with him. Halfway through the dinner, he moves his hand over and he introduces himself, and we had this beautiful connection. And I got to share how he changed my life and about the specific mushroom experience. And so it was synchronistic. I got to have this mushroom themed meal, have him there in front of me. It felt like another affirmation about the intelligence of reality,
Yeah.
just having this one experience with him.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That is full circle. So what is it that motivates you every day to do the work that you do? What is the spark for you?
I mean, honest answer is love. And I've been focused on what is my life purpose since I was 17 or 18. And I think that happens when you're in this existential place of, why do I exist? Why do we exist? What brings my life meaning? And having studied a lot of developmental psychology, especially looking at the work of Abraham Maslow, He says we move through these stages of needs and desires. At the bottom, it's security and safety. Just we want to feel safe. Then it's belonging and social connection. And then it's self-esteem. We want to do things so we feel good enough about ourselves. Then you have this lead till self-actualization. I know who and what I am. And after that, for the last 10 years, he worked on this stage called transcendence. And it comes from this place of knowing we're all one and interconnected, and that the greatest meaning comes from helping others. And so I really believe our deepest value comes from being of service. And so I want to make the most while I'm here. Since I felt so much pain in this life, I want to reduce the pain on this planet and help further consciousness while I'm here.
So what's been one of the best success stories you've been involved with? I know you can't for client purposes, not anything specific like that, but what's been one success story that always puts a smile on your face that you've been involved with professionally?
Yeah, obviously there are so many, and especially, at times working with psychedelic medicines, it's like watching a caterpillar go into the cocoon, go through this massive transformation, and seeing it come out as a butterfly, and you're seeing it in real time in the course of hours. And I've followed up with people sometimes for years, and their lives are completely different. One that quickly has come to mind is somebody that was suffering deeply, and she was drinking a lot every day. There's a lot of childhood trauma. There was a lot there, and she couldn't stop drinking. She'd been in therapy for like 20 years, done all the medications. And once I'd given her the medicine, all this deep agony and pain come up. It was like the most pain she'd ever felt, but for 6 hours. And she got to realize that her addiction was based on early childhood trauma. And there's generally a one-to-one correlation, but she hadn't made that connection and hadn't been able to see the trauma. So for a child, say a third grader, when the pain is too big, they dissociate and repress it down. Especially if it's coming from your parents, it's too hard to be like, oh, my parents are bad or they're abusive and treating me bad. You dissociate from it. And this kind of breaks those boundaries. And so I was with her. She's going through deep agony and suffering for 6 hours. But because she released all that energy, complete life shift after that journey. Drinking after years has not been an issue.
Wow.
And I've seen many people go through similar things where they break through 2 decades of depression over the course of a single journey.
So what are you the proudest of everything you've done in your life? What are you the proudest of?
Oh, thanks for asking. It was writing my book. And since I was 15, I wanted to write a book, and I tried a few times, but I was really focused in academia, so I'm always having to read and write for the actual classes. And it felt like this deep need in my being, like this heavy weight I was carrying, that I need to do this. I need to do it before I die. It was kind of all encompassing. And so I finally had the time to do it while working on my dissertation, which was my book. And it's like I was climbing this huge mountain. And for those have looked at my book, there's like 400 references. I read 75 books just on psychedelics. It's fairly one of the most comprehensive books I've ever seen on the topic by far. And it was a lot to put together. And so it was a few years of hardcore dedication and writing, like wake up, keep going. So for me, it's the most important thing I ever did. I feel it's a pretty important topic. And to see it all the way through, and I met a lot of resistance for the teachers at the time. They weren't so happy that I was studying psychedelics. It was where we weren't where we are right now in culture, that everybody's really embracing it.
Yeah.
So I met a lot of resistance, and that was painful and hard. But I fought and I saw it through, and then I got it published right away. And it's been so great to seeing something I've dedicated so much of my being to, feel like synthesizing 20 years of work into one copy,
Yeah.
one volume. To see that come out into the world, I have felt an immense sense of freedom, sense of like, wow, I finished one of the main things I'm here to do.
So let's say you have a dream tonight, you run into a much younger version of yourself, and you could give that version of you a piece of advice based on the life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained. What would you tell your young version?
Yeah, I mean, the honest answer is I don't think he would believe me. That being said, it would probably be like, hey, it's all gonna be okay. But those words only sink in so much when what you'd experienced when you were younger was mostly pain. When I was young, it's like I was going through this black tunnel, but been it so long, I just think it's blackness forever, and you don't know there's light at the end. It's just a tunnel. It's only by coming out and having a lot of positive experiences later in life and good points of references and going through some deep healing that I really got there. I probably would hug him and hold him, and that'd probably be more deeper than what I'd say. It was like he just needed like bodily, physical insurance and some deep connection that he wasn't getting.
Yeah. So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, readers of your book, but you ultimately lead the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, it's a great question. Somebody who tries his best and I have for a long time, and I feel I'm pretty high integrity and I live with a high value system. I've been vegan, mostly vegan for like 12, 13 years. And that's one way to kind of discipline myself to live within a certain set of values of not causing harm. I feel really dedicated. I'd like to think I'm on it in general and on point, but of course I'm not always. Somebody that's very just devoted and committed to his life path.
So if anyone out there wants to get your book, hire you, anything pertaining to your world, where can they go?
Yeah, the website is psychedelicevolution.org. My book, The Psilocybin Connection, Psychedelics, the Transformation of Consciousness and Evolution on the Planet, an Integral Approach, is on all the platforms, including Amazon, Target, Barnes & Nobles, and it's also out as an audiobook, so you can also find it on Audible.
Right on. This has been great, man. Thank you for opening up. It's a wonderful story. I really appreciate you opening up about it.
Thank you. Also appreciate the pace of this. So it's kind of fun to go back and forth really quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I could tell that was your style. Hey, I want to get your pronunciation of your name down.
Yes. Jahan Khamsehzadeh.
Okay, perfect. I never want to assume.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. Take care. Have a good weekend.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. You too.
Take care.